up, guys? Otterpop here. Back to the... Wow, why have I already forgotten the name? Victor Jennings, the scumbag book agent who clearly seems to have a lot of enemies from all over the place. I'm gonna try and cover days 5, 6, and 7 in this last episode. Or like, at least what I assume to be the last episode. At least for this guy anyways. So... Okay, Chris, so this is the roommate of, what was it, Terry Smith or something like that? Terry something.
I'm Kristen Colby. I thought Victor was a nice guy who just wanted to help me with my career. Turns out I was wrong.
What? I didn't catch that at all.
I'm Kristen Colby. I thought Victor was a nice guy who just wanted to help me with my career. Turns out I was wrong.
Okay, that's what she said. She's definitely from the South. Just saying that. Her schoolwork is never early and often late, and some of her professors suspect it's done by someone else entirely. So she seems to be a bit more of a, I guess, in a way, party girl than her roommate Terry does. And here's her interview regarding her experiences with Victor, and yep, it's a longer interview. Yeah, sure, whatever gets me out of chem. Don't get me wrong, I don't like chem too, but come on. Okay, so Kristen, the roommate, had a lot of interesting information to give off, so it kind of confirmed something that I'd suspected earlier, was that for the New Year's Eve party that Victor had, when she and Terry went to the party, they returned to their sorority or whatever at different times, and Kristen basically confirmed that Terry did get raped. But for Kristen, it was a very different situation because, like, apparently Victor got a little bit handsy with her, and she's like, I'm not drunk enough yet, so she did get drunk enough, but he got a little bit, like, overly aggressive and wanted to film the act, basically, and Kristen's like, no, so she ended up leaving. So she went back to the sorority, but then Terry didn't come back until later, and Terry actually did get raped, whereas Kristen, it was a little bit more initially consensual, but apparently she got a black eye, and she had to end up telling her brother, whose name is Kyle, about it, and he went... Kristen seems to have an alibi as well, and she vouches for herself, as well as Terry and her brother Kyle, that none of them killed Victor. But after a phone call with the coroner's office, the detectives asked Victor's brother and then his friend to come back so the detectives could see what they thought about the news. What news? That's the thing. Oh, okay, so no wonder the information, like the coroner's report is completed, but it's not public yet. So, homicide. Okay, so there's a black Buick and a white and gold Toyota. The black Buick is Gail. Okay, Gail Jennings is Raymond's wife, as I suspected initially. So, I mean, Raymond got a slight bit defensive, but I kind of expected that. Okay, a Buick Park Avenue. Buick Park Avenue. Oh, so it's basically a little car. Because if I remember correctly, based on the neighbor Zena's notes, there was a little black car, but the black one is driven by Gail. So I don't know if that's the same car, but at least that's where my mind's kind of taking these thus far. His friend. Second interview with Carl. One more time, Carl. Did you kill Victor Jennings? I told you no, bitch. I'm sorry, that is a little bit funny. Okay, so now... So his memory does not seem to be great, which, frankly, I can't really blame him. My memory sucks, too. But, he apparently broke a coffee cup and cut himself picking up the pieces in either, from what it sounds like, Victor's office or the kitchen. And, you know, detectives still trying to pin this, potentially at least, on Carl. Yeah, he really doesn't seem to remember a whole lot. Met with a man who had reportedly threatened Victor. Is this Kyle? Yep, this is Kyle. This is, Kristen's brother.
I'm Kyle Colby. Victor beat my sister up. I'd buy a beer for the man who got rid of him.
April 14th, 1996. That's actually almost exactly, 23 years to the date. A couple days shy, like 2 days off. Kyle Colby came into the world with an attitude, screaming, kicking, and mad as hell. Oh, he's a protective sibling. I get that. I really get that. He's so proud of her and often brags that she's going to be an internationally known model. Many people said she's the one person he's always kind to. Yeah, siblings can kind of do that. Interview again. Okay, he is very protective of his sister. Also, apparently he confronted Victor back in like sometime in January and with a baseball bat. But he never saw Victor, and he says that Carl can attest to that. Okay, so here's the coroner's report. Full autopsy performed by Victoria Witt. Or Whitty. Not sure which one it is. The head hair is brown with a maximum length of 6 inches. There was mention of, like, you know, the evidence gathered was something about, you know, a knife, and then a bunch of blood samples and some hair samples, and the hair samples were brunette, but I didn't know anything about any of the hair colors of anybody, and I didn't really think about it to look at the hair colors of everybody, but they could have, yeah, most likely come from him. A foreign object penetrating the anterior left ventricle is observed. So there were 2 different injuries. One of them related to his neck, and the other related to his abdominal region. Stab wound to the left chest penetrating the left anterior ventricle of the heart. A metal serrated blade measuring 190 centimeters long and 20 centimeters wide at its widest point is recovered. Opinion, fatal injury. A contusion measuring 2 inches long by 1 inch wide on the left side of the neck. Non-fatal paramortem injury. So for all of you who at least don't know, like a lot of you probably know postmortem, a word which means after death. There are also 2 other words that people probably don't know about. One of which is paramortem, and the other being antemortem. So postmortem means after death. Antemortem, A-N-T-E, mortem, means before death, whereas paramortem, like think of perimeter. Like paramortem basically means around the time of death, so it could be like right at the point of death, right before, right after, but it's a more general area, whereas postmortem and antemortem are a lot more defined. Paramortem fits just kind of the general area of around the time of death. And also a contusion, for those of you who don't know, it's basically the same thing as a bruise, the breaking of blood vessels underneath the skin, which is what causes those nasty purplish and yellowish and bluish and greenish marks to form. I actually kind of had one on my ass for a little bit after I ran it into the corner of the kitchen counter. Yeah, it stayed on me for like a week. Luckily it wasn't too painful, but ugh. So nothing in terms of bacteria or drugs. A lot of evidence collected. Blade recovered from the chest cavity. Ooh, that is a nasty looking knife. Oops. Oh, dang. That's a nasty looking knife. Samples of blood type A positive, so I imagine that's... Yeah. Oh. Body temperature, rigor and livor mortis, stomach contents, and other factors approximate the time of death between 5 and 5:30 p.m. Immediate cause of death, puncture wound to left ventricle causing massive bleeding. There, again, it keeps going back, or my mind keeps going back to the fact that there was, according to the neighbor, a black car that was at Victor's house at around 5:15 p.m. So that would absolutely fit with this time. If only we knew what kind of car it was and who drove it. Luckily, there's a license plate, so there is that. Crime Beat had some thoughts. What does that mean? Victor Jennings' death ruled a homicide. I love how the article basically starts with, duh. What everyone is wondering and no one in the know is talking about is what exactly Victor Jennings was blackmailing the Hawks about. I was wondering about that too, and it's interesting that this article decided to call the Hawks out on that. It sounds like a lot of suspects, but what evidence does the YCSD have? We hope it's more than they've said, or they may never catch the killer. Good luck, detectives. Jeez, man. Frickin'... No, stop. Frickin' news and media. Okay, so they met with Victor's attorney again. Brad says he won't leave his money to his lying wife, and has already given Raymond way more than he deserves. Victor's beneficiary had always been Carl Asher, but half the estate goes to a Troy Daniels? The name was mentioned. Yeah, I remember the attorney. I think he either mentioned Troy Daniels or Troy just by his first name. The attorney remembered, or there were a whole bunch of names he gave in his first interview, but there was one of them he couldn't remember the full name and needed to go back to his record. So I wonder if it was Troy Daniels. Ray was only hours old when the nurses heard them arguing. One of them went to check on Margaret and saw Brad slap her. So Margaret tried... So the attorney, his grandfather is the attorney for Victor's father, Brad. And Margaret, Brad's wife, wanted to talk to the attorney, to talk to his grandfather, to talk to Brad about getting her... Sorry, that's confusing. About getting her in the will. She asked the attorney to put her in contact with a good private investigator to locate someone named John Raymond. That's a new name we haven't heard yet. Who's Troy Daniels as well? Okay, they met with William again. Raymond said he wanted to settle with William about the fence. Yeah, how did Raymond hear about the fence issue? Yeah, I don't think Ray Jennings does have the authority to take down the fence. So why did he? Okay, here's the vehicle registration. Oh. What? No! No, I can't read more? Oh no! Oh no! Oh no! Can... Oh my gosh, what the heck? I don't know why it's... Oh my gosh. Okay, either I'm never going to be able to access this information, or I need to wait to access the information. Okay, that's... Ugh, jeez. Oh! So, I've learned... So here's basically the overall scoop that I've got. And there may be a lot of little things that I'm missing, but I just kind of want to point out the big things. Victor was a book agent. He was a bit of a scumbag. And he ended up getting found in his house while on house arrest, dead in the kitchen, with a knife wound to his chest area, and apparently a bruise on his neck as well. He had a friend named Carl, who was sort of like the researcher slash bodyguard, and then his assistant. His assistant didn't really like him too much, but there was nothing too noticeable in terms of their relationship. And Carl seemed mildly frustrated with him, but again, nothing too noticeable on that front. But Victor also had a couple of neighbors, one being William, who was well known and who had a bit of a legal dispute with him regarding some land. And he also had another neighbor, Zena, who's a bit of an oddball, but managed to pay very close attention to him because she didn't like his activities or something of the sort. So she ended up having a lot of information available. Victor also has a family, a doting father, Brad, and then a mother, Margaret, who, while she didn't like him, she was still his mother, and a younger brother, Raymond, who did not seem to like Victor at all, probably for good reason, and kind of basically ceased contact with him for the most part. So, and Victor had some fun, I guess you could say, with two young college students, one of whom was actually raped and the other of whom was kind of threatened and beaten a little bit, but she managed to, stand her own ground and get away. And then her brother ended up threatening him months prior, but I think he's pretty much got an alibi. I think a lot of these people have an alibi is the thing. Apparently Victor might have had some stuff missing from his desk, which, based on that, I'm not sure, because again, there was a prized music box in the family, and it ended up going to Victor. But if what I read was correct, the assistant, Lee Merriweather, mentioned that the music box may have been missing, meaning that, I want to say Raymond or his wife may have something to do with it, because very few people knew the value of that thing, if it really is missing, if I did kind of read that correctly. It's very interesting. I will say, before I end this episode, is that the one thing that I notice about this stuff is that a lot of it focuses more on interviews especially, which I can understand. I don't completely like that, because granted, crime scene investigation follows all these various aspects, but for forensic oriented individuals like myself, it's a little bit more about the actual science. Again, what I find the most interesting to look at, just in general, are the coroner's reports, the evidence taken for analysis, and sometimes even the biographies to an extent. And the actual physical evidence rather than testimonial evidence, which can sometimes even be circumstantial at best. So I don't I can understand why it is that way. So basically, crime scene follows both law enforcement as well as forensic input into solving a crime. So I can understand why they have both forensic and law enforcement added to, investigations like these. I wish there would be a little bit more forensic information on stuff like this. But again, I can understand why it takes a little bit more of a law enforcement side of things. And I will say the only reason that I'm not a huge fan of it, and the more law enforcement rather than forensic stuff, is because as somebody who has studied and graduated with a degree in forensic science, based on the jobs that we basically look for, we're more focused on the science aspect of it, the facts and the information. We are more interested with obtaining as much information from our own analysis and observation as much as possible, with as little bias as possible. So, because, in CSI, actually, you know what, I'll probably save that a little bit for maybe because I've been thinking about analyzing CSI episodes, like from the very first few seasons and whatnot, because apparently those are the worst offenders, and I've examined one of the episodes and it's a horrible offender. So there's that. But forensic individuals like myself, and granted I'm not in a forensic career, but I've done a lot of reading and studying on this. I've even purchased plenty of books on my own time relating to individuals who do have this experience. And again, many of my professors do have a lot of this experience themselves. But for people like us in the forensic community, it's more about gaining information rather than, or like using information given to us and interpreting it to the best of our ability, rather than necessarily, solving a case of whodunit kind of thing. We're more focused on the logical and scientific aspect of the investigation, and sometimes things like testimony and interviews, circumstantial evidence, and witness statements can sometimes get in the way and create something of a bias for us. And that's A, my own interpretation of it, but B, that's information that I've gathered from both professors as well as many books that I've read, both factual texts as well as memoirs and stories. So I'm gonna try. I hope I have access to more of that information, because man, it was just getting to a good place. I mean, come on. I've been waiting for that. The vehicle registration, or the vehicle list that the neighbor Zena had. I've been waiting for that, but I guess I'm gonna have to leave that for another episode. And yeah, I mean, let me know. Do you think that me analyzing an episode of CSI would be interesting? Trust me, I could get really, really deep into it, because a lot of people have it's gotten a little better lately, but a lot of people have a lot of misconceptions about those CSI crime shows and whatnot, and I can show everybody just how inaccurate they are. I'm sure people at this point know that they are not necessarily true, but I think the crime shows are a lot more inaccurate than most people would give them credit for. So, would you like to see me do something like that? I probably will anyways, but would you like to see me do something like that? So I'm going to have to leave it here. I'm going to have to try again to see if I can access any more of this information at another time, but nothing I can do about it now. So thanks everybody for watching, and as usual, until the next video guys, check your laters.